Okay, so for the next video, we'll continue where we had left off. In the meantime, hopefully you were practicing, but I was. What I've established from what we were discussing, the buccal contour and the lingual contour. And if you remember, the buccal tips are occluding with the central fossa of the opposing tooth. I have not done the line angles or the point angles yet. That's actually going to be the next step. So the buccal part was pretty easy. I used a textbook. I saw that it was not contacting on the tip, but it was slightly mesial and slightly distal of the tip where the contacts. Same thing on all 5 cusps. On the lingual side, you pretty much do it by eye for now, and then once we establish it, we can touch it up when we move it in a lateral movement, in balancing or in working, then the lingual cusp will contact the opposing, but not in centric occlusion. To establish my buccal groove and my distobuccal groove, what I did was I marked, if you look at the maxillary tips, I marked the tip with a red pencil because you already know that the mesio-buccal cusp tip of the maxillary first molar occludes with the buccal groove of the lower first molar. And that's the definition of Engel's classification of occlusion, class 1 occlusion. So by doing that, if I can draw these lines, and then I can draw the opposing lines, and I close them down, everything comes together. It comes together in centric occlusion, and when I move it in a lateral movement, you can see the cusps are sliding in between each other. So it's working in centric occlusion. Now the patient can move into working movement. They can go into balancing. They can protrude. They can retract. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. One thing I forgot from the first video, we're doing so many movements, we're going to be damaging all the teeth. So I'll be picking up some bottles of nail polish, nothing fancy. It's just clear lacquer from a 99-cent store, so don't go out and buy anything fancy. But if you're in the lab, I'll have bottles on the desk. So what we're going to do on all 6 models, remember we have 3 projects, so on all 6 models, we're going to be painting the incisal edge on the lower, and we'll be painting the lingual edge on the upper. Because when you look at upper and lower, upper and lower teeth, in centric occlusion, there is no contact. But remember, we're going to be protruding and retracting. We're going to be moving, working, and balancing. And if we're doing this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times per case, we will damage all the teeth. So after you articulate, I'll try to remember everyone, we're going to paint 2 coats of clear nail polish, especially on the cuspids, and on the lingual side, and that'll protect it. If the nail polish starts to wear off, just take my bottle, touch up wherever it's wearing off, which will probably be the tip of the cuspids, let it dry for 2 minutes, and then continue with your waxing. But if you forget that, all your teeth are going to wind up breaking. So again, that should have been on the first video that I did on articulating, but just remembered it now. Okay, so let's continue. So now, what we're going to do, let's look at this carefully. We've already established the buccal contours. We've established the lingual contours, but we have not done the line angles or the point angles. So I've marked the red part that we finished already. Now if you look very carefully, the line angle and the point angle on the mesial distal, mesial distal, mesial distal, mesial distal, both sides. And if I turn it around, you can see it's a V shape. So as we're waxing, we're going to do these one at a time, but you do not go straight across. You're just wasting your time. Remember, we do not want to carve here. We want to put it in the perfect place. So as you're adding, you should be adding in and then back out, in and back out. When you're coming over to the cuspid, if you go straight across by accident, you're going to wind up out on the labial surface. Makes no sense at all. You want to have a mesial distal contact, but we're not doing the marginal ridges yet. The marginal ridges will be the next video we'll do in green. So right now, all we're doing are the 4 corners. So I think the easiest one to do right here is just a single. But over here, you have a double. So this is going to be more difficult. So what I'll do is I'll start off, I'll just do a mesial line angle and point angle or a distal one. Once we establish that, then I'll show you how to do these 2. So that'll be this video. So let me get started. And again, we're doing everything with our PKT instrument. And we're going with blue wax. So let's start for no particular reason. You could go with any color you want, but let's all follow it. We'll follow the book. We'll all do the same thing till you get the hang of it. So now, remember I said it's a V shape. So I'm not adding out on the buckle. I'll be adding in further to get that V shape. I don't want to have to keep touching it up over and over again. Also, this blue wax has a tremendous amount of pigment in it, and it does stain. So if you make a mistake and you put the wax in the wrong place and you try to take it away, the model is going to be stained blue forever. And there's nothing you can do about it to fix it up. So please think about what you're doing. Remember, before you start, you have to have the end in mind before. You have to know where the final product is. So you need to know what the tooth looks like. If you don't know, take out a sample case. You have the lower model. You'll also have mine here, so you can look at mine. Will be on the bench at all times. You can borrow them. You can use the large ones from the PTC company. You can use the Peter K. Thomas models. You can do the additional demo models, but do not start adding wax and just throwing it down anywhere, or you're just wasting your time. So what I've done at this point, I built up just the line and point angle. And if you look at the textbook, the area I just completed was just a little tiny corner, and there is no contact there. The contact was off to the side of the tips. We did that in the last video. So it's just that sharp corner here, here. There's no contact. The contact is here. It's not over there. So how do you do it though? If you're not sure where to go, you know when you close, even though there's no contact, when you put these two models together, you can see there is no space in the occlusion. If I move it into a working movement, you can see there is no space in there. So if you know that, if I close this down, I should be able to close the articulator and see no space. If I see a space, then that means I didn't come up high enough. So now, what I would suggest you do, try the two here on the mesial side, try the two over here on the distal side. Once you get the hang of that, I'll look at it, we'll correct it, we'll work on it together. Then we're going to move into the doubles. But again, we do not go straight across. It has a V shape. So I should be waxing in and then back out. So let's go ahead and start. And I do them one at a time. Don't try to combine them. It'll just be a mess and you'll have to cut it all away. So I'm starting on the distal side of the premolar. Distal of the premolar. I'm going all the way down into the interdental papilla area. Don't leave yourself with a space, because then you try to fill it in later, you're just going to make a mess of everything. So the first drops I'm adding are all the way down. Then I slightly build it up slowly. Don't touch that Thomas notch area. You already did that. Close it down. Make sure you're not seeing a space. If you are, you can add a drop more. If you need to add, try to do it from the inside, because I find that if you do it from the outside, if it drips, it's going to drip all over the model. You're going to have a mess. So if you do spill any, better that you spill it on the inside, and then you can't even see it. But if you try to feed it in from the facial side and you're wrong, it's going to be such a mess, you're never going to be able to correct it. So at least if you work from the inner portion, from the occlusal, then no one will see it if you make a mistake. We can always touch it up. So now I've done two. I have one more drop. I should be there. At this point, I've done the line angle and the point angle on the first premolar and the second premolar. And I can use my ash trimmer, or you have similar instruments. And if you want to accentuate that area, you can take your instrument. Mine's pretty good because it has a triangular shape. I can warm it up slightly in the no flame unit. And if I just take it and very slightly slide down. So I'm going through the occlusal surface, coming down, down, down through the buccal. And in a second, I'll hold it up so you'll see what I mean. I'm opening up the interdental papilla because the patient has gingival tissue there, so you can't impinge on it or the whole thing will be inflamed and it's not going to work out. So I've done as two separate. Again, do not try. So let me take this off. I'm going to hold it up and hopefully you can see this. So if you look very carefully, You can see first I did the distal corners. I would do these two, then I would do these two just to practice. Then I can come over here. I can do the distal inclination, this line angle. Then I can do this line angle. Again, I did not wax straight across because that would be the wrong place. You'd have to take it all out. So I started on the inside and I came in a V shape. Then I took my instrument, warmed it up, and I was able to just very slightly go over it and accentuate that area. I have my occlusal embrasure, I have my cervical embrasure, I have my buccal embrasure. So there's 3 embrasures. Good question on a test. How many embrasures are there? On the lingual side, there's a lingual embrasure. So that actually was a national board question on the national board exam. How many embrasures are there between any 2 teeth? So you have a buccal embrasure, you have a lingual embrasure, you have an occlusal embrasure, and you have a cervical embrasure. The largest one is a cervical embrasure. It just doesn't look big because it has an interdental papilla filled in there. And the smallest one is the occlusal embrasure. And I'll ask you in class, why did nature create embrasures? I'm not going to tell you now. Let's think about it and see if you can figure out why it's there. Okay, so for this point, we have that done. What I'm going to do before the next video, I will finish this up so you don't have to sit and wait. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish these 2 corners. One is done. I'll finish these 2. I've already done this one. Then I'll come to the lingual side. Again, a V shape, a V shape, a V shape. And make sure you put the 2 models together. So if you put the models together, there should be absolutely no space when you're done. So when I hand articulate and I close this down and I'm looking inside, I see no space. So even if you have a really nice looking embrasure and a nice V shape, if I put this together, and that's exactly how I'm going to be checking it when you bring it up. If I take my instrument and the instrument sinks, let's say the one I didn't do, if it goes in like this, then obviously you're too short. So I should be able to come over. When you're finished, I should be able to go like this, and there should be no penetration. Then I know you have the right shape, the right height. But if my instrument disappears into that area, that means you just have to build it slightly higher. All right, so that's it for this video. See you soon. Good luck.